I didn't expect this to replace my other smart scope. I also didn't expect a smart telescope at this price to feel like it should cost more than it does. And I definitely didn't expect a feature that I thought was a gimmick to completely change how relaxed I feel when I'm doing my astrophotography from the couch. I know this all sounds a bit dramatic, and on paper, none of those things should have happened. But after a month of actually living with the DWARF Mini, between backyard nights, balcony sessions, and a dark sky trip, this is the one that I kept reaching for. By the end of this video, I hope you'll understand why. And not from a spec sheet, because you can Google that. You're not watching this video for that. And not from hype, but from real images, real software, real battery life, and what it's actually been like to own one for a little over a month now. Before we talk results, it matters how this thing actually got used. For a full month, the DWARF Mini lived somewhere easy to grab in this little storage case. It wasn't packed away like some of my other equipment. This wasn't a special, special night only sort of gear. I used it on any night where I didn't want friction, on nights where busting out the full rig and all of the stress and possibly bailing early, or if it would have been cloudy. Quick note. I'm editing the video right now, and this really is emphasizing just how easy this thing is to use. While I'm editing the video, which I'm not good at, so it does take a lot of concentration and effort, I actually have the DWARF Mini going because I know I can. It's right now doing an image of All Attack and the Horsehead Nebula. You can sort of see it there in the picture. But I just started this like 2 or 3 minutes ago. But yeah, I was sitting here editing the video. I was like, oh, you know what? It's clear outside. I should start tonight's imaging run. And like all my other scopes are set up out there, but I know it's going to take me at least 45 minutes just to get one of those up and running. And this one, I can just go out there, click the button, turn it on, and go. So yeah. That's like the best proof I have that this thing is just really easy to use. All right, back to the video. Any of those things, I'll just reach for this. What I decided was if the DWARF could get me an image that I would genuinely be happy with it, I would use it on that night. And I wanted to test how often that happened. That behavior, what gear you actually say yes to, ended up being the most important result of this review. One feature that I thought was a gimmick and I ended up really loving is the wide-angle picture-in-picture view. When the DWARF is imaging, in the top left corner you see a wide-angle view of the sky around the target that it's actually pointed at. And at first I thought this was like a daytime feature or a setup gimmick, but in real use night to night, it had a surprisingly big impact on how relaxed the whole experience felt to me. Again, just sitting on my couch. With my bigger scopes, I mostly guess how long I'll be able to image a target. I know there's a roof over there somewhere and there's trees over there, and I know that they'll come up eventually. And when the imaging or guiding stops, my brain immediately goes to, why did this fail? Did something disconnect? Did clouds roll in? Did I hit the roof line? Like, what happened? And with the DWARF, I can literally see that I'm coming up to the edge of my roof, or that a tree is about to clip the frame, and instead of stressing about it, I can just switch to the next target at that point. I can watch that wide angle view to see whether I've cleared the trees before stacking even starts again, because maybe it's too early for that target for me. I know that sounds like a really small thing, but it had a big impact on my ability to relax and enjoy the night. Think of it like standing right next to your scope and staring down the top of it to see what it's seeing within the context of the whole sky. I didn't expect to love that feature, and I did genuinely think it was kind of a gimmick, that second sensor. But after a month, it is one of the reasons that I use this more often or used it in conjunction with my bigger scopes, because I could point this over to the same target as my big scope, as long as it's in the same area, and get this nice wide view. So I treated this almost like a recon device. The easiest wins with the DWARF are nebula. Dual band mode, having that dual band filter plus the nice consistent tracking gives you recognizable, satisfying images really quickly, regardless of what the moon's doing. These are the kind of results that most people would be perfectly happy sharing straight from the app, and we'll talk about the app in a little bit. For a lot of people, this is probably the first time they're seeing these objects as images that they've captured themselves, as opposed to something from, a NASA archive. And that really does matter. All right, here we're going to be comparing the same data from the same night, but with some different processing. So we'll start with the app. The app gives you a really great image fast. If you want to push deeper, things like Siril and Veralux on your computer can take that exact same data set a lot further. And hopefully by midway through this video, you'll know exactly which path makes sense for you and how much extra quality you'll get if you put the time in to learn some of these additional apps. With a decent Sky, Suburban Boral 6, some careful processing, these files really do hold up well. And this is where the DWARF stops feeling like a little toy and starts feeling almost like a legitimate astrophotography imaging tool. That being said, there is a sort of ceiling. This does have a small sensor and it has a small aperture. And so you'll see structure, but you won't get that really fine, high detail stuff that you can get from a larger imaging rig. Although for people coming from a phone, this is still a massive upgrade. Before we talk about Siril, I want to focus on probably what most people who buy this will actually end up using. That's the DWARF app itself. To enhance the images from the telescope, you would then just connect to your DWARF Mini, go into the Album tab. From there, you have two important options. There's Mega Stack, which lets you stack multiple nights of the same target, and that will help really increase signal-to-noise ratio. And Stellar Studio, which contains the image enhancement tools that DWARF makes available to us. These tools are auto enhancement, star correction, denoise, star removal, and watermark. And here's my honest take on these little applets, if you will. Auto enhancement is what most people will actually need and use, and that's it. From what I can tell, auto seems to handle gradient removal, which is when the sky is lighter on one side than the other, denoising, which is the sort of speckles of noise, contrast balancing, and stretching. It does exactly what you want for like a social media ready image. If you want to do these things manually, star correction is what focuses on the star size and shape. It tightens up the stars and makes them really round and bright without blowing them out and having it look bad. Denoise does a great job of removing the chromatic noise, so that's like the sort of colored speckles, and the salt and pepper noise, which is like isolated bright or dark pixels. Star removal is purely artistic. It removes the stars entirely. It's not scientific, but it is like really striking to look at, and toggling the stars on and off like this makes for really eye-catching social media effects if that's what you're into. For most people going in here, the final step will be watermark. And here you can choose how much of your session information to display, because you probably don't want to put your location on the internet. You can add a caption, you can include your name or your Instagram handle. And once you hit save, you can either save that image straight to your device or share it from the app to your social media app of choice. An important note, the 3 enhancements and the auto, so basically everything except watermarking, require the image to be uploaded to DWARF's servers, processed there, and sent back. So you do need an internet connection to use these. It hasn't been a problem for me. It works really quick within 20-30 seconds, but it is worth knowing. To use the DWARF Mini, you absolutely do not need to install Siril and all these apps on your PC. This section here is going to be for when you want the best possible image out of the data that you have. The DWARF exports real astrophotography data, lights and calibration frames like darks and flats and all these things, and you can treat it like any other data set you would generate. So to start, I generate master darks, flats, and bias, I stack with rejection, and I run my background extraction. Siril's spectrophotometric color calibration is a huge upgrade. It uses real star data instead of guessing for the colors. For stretching, I start with Veralux. Veralux's hypermetric stretch reveals faint detail. I then use Silentium to control noise, and Revelia for final contrast and structure. Same data, different time investment. But because the dwarf data is so consistent, I am seriously considering building a like one-click Siril script for it that'll sort of automatically build all the flats and everything for us. If that's something you want, drop it down in the comments, let me know before I spend too much time trying to figure out how to install Python. Battery life matters in the real world for a travel device like this. In my testing, running real imaging sessions with Wi-Fi on and the app checked periodically just to see how it's going, the dwarf comfortably handled 3 full 1-hour target sessions with some usable battery left. Cold will reduce that, but overall, this behaved like a practical travel scope that, will last you about as long as you want to stay outside. And if you want to run it for longer than about 3 3/4 hours, you can just plug into the USB Type-C port here on the front, and it'll keep it topped off while you're imaging if you want to go past those 4 hours. There were a couple of accessories that did change how often I use this, I think. One is the tripod, and 2 is this pouch. The pouch, I know, sounds kind of boring, but it does actually matter. It's something, if something is easy to grab with like this little handle, I think you'll actually use it more often. And it holds everything that you want in it pretty safely with some like buffers in between. And then there's the tripod. This tripod lets you run in equatorial tilt mode without having to buy a wedge. And that's really good for us because even a budget wedge can cost way more than this entire tripod. So this helps you point the telescope at the North Pole if you're in the Northern Hemisphere and lets you get even longer exposures without having your stars trail at all. And let's talk about stars. So the dwarf's star shapes are consistent. They're not perfect. They're pretty good for something sort of in this class. And that consistency makes stacking the images and processing even easier. In any given run, I would probably only lose 1 or 2 frames that couldn't get stacked because of sort of guiding issues. And yeah, I can build a guided astrophotography rig that will sort of get a higher, samples kept ratio, but now you're talking something that costs 3 or 4 times as much money. I want to be really clear about something. Ease of use is not something that is unique to the dwarf. A lot of smart scopes today are genuinely easy to set up, like the Seestar S50 over there as well. What is unique here is the price relative to the quality overall. If you told me that this costs more than the Seestar S50, I would believe you because it's got a more advanced sensor and it's a much smaller, lighter package. But this doesn't cost more than an S50. I did have, however, a few like weird software moments. Occasionally the app will be doing something that I believe is important, but it just shows a spinning wheel without telling you what's going on. For example, if you long press the stop button while you're doing a stack, which I like because then I can't stop it accidentally, you'll sometimes just have to wait. I think it's while the last exposure is finishing. It just sort of has this spinning wheel and it almost feels like something's wrong, but it does eventually go away. I'd like to eventually see like a little notification saying, hey, we're wrapping up the last image. You can control it again in about 45 seconds. These sort of issues were rare, but they did break the magic a little bit. But because it's software, my hope is that Dwarf will be able to fix all these things as we move forward. My fiance actually asked to use the Dwarf a couple times recently because she wanted to image the moon. So I was using the Dwarf while also imaging with my big rigs. And she was like, hey, can I use the Dwarf? Which she has never asked me to use any of my telescopes before. Even the S50, it's usually me saying, hey, you should go set this up and do this. But, over the past month, we've had a couple of nights where we're both actively trying to take pictures of the night sky. And that's really nice. And again, she has very little to no experience with any telescopes outside of the S50 and now the DWARF Mini. And yeah, she logged into it. I logged off of it. She captured the images and she posted these images straight to her Instagram. No help from me, no stress. And I think that's one of the audiences that this product absolutely nails. Those people that are Astro-Curious or just want to hang out with you. I do want to address one comparison, honestly, which is the DWARF Mini versus my old Seestar S50. The Seestar has a larger aperture, like it's got a bigger lens, and it is optically very capable. But after this last month, I honestly haven't reached for it at all. Between that secondary sensor on here and the fact that the Seestar is actually using a StarViz 1 sensor, an older IMX 462, where the DWARF Mini uses a StarViz 2 sensor, or the IMX 662. In practice, that shows up as cleaner stacked data and better low light performance. So I actually think this thing outperforms the S50. Additionally, my Seestar is a little old now, and like any all-in-one device, the battery life doesn't stay perfect forever, and so I can usually get about 2.5 hours out of the Seestar. And for how I image today, which is quick sessions, travel, I want less friction, the DWARF has taken the spot of the Seestar in any of those occasions. The DWARF Mini, like I said, is perfect for people who are Astro-Curious. It costs less than a third of the most budget imaging setup that I can imagine to put together. And yet it delivers for them, for like newcomers, the same awe-inducing experience of staring deep into the cosmos. And a lot of what makes this work weren't the headline specs. They were those small things that I assumed were gimmicks. Again, I'm going to keep harping on this. That wide-angle picture-in-picture is one of the best examples. It let me relax, switch targets confidently, and actually enjoy the night. And that's why, one of the reasons I think I used it more and had it always by the door when I was going to run outside. And why it replaced my other smart scope. If you want to check out the DWARF Mini or the bag or the tripod or any of those things, I have got affiliate links down below to the exact ones that I got. And full disclosure, if enough of you buy a DWARF Mini from that link, I get to keep mine. And I do honestly hope that that happens because I'll probably end up buying it either way. And like I said, I'll also have the tripod and the pouch I'm using down below. And if you guys want me to work on a one-click Siril script, let me know. I'll start putting that together. But that will take some work because I've never done one of those before. For Deep Sky Labs, I'm Francisco. I want to take a second to thank all of the members. We have doubled our membership on the channel. We now have 2. And I'll put their names up on screen now. Thank you guys for sort of allowing me to continue through this exploration. And I'll see you in the next one. Clear skies.